Welcome back to PC Builder. I'm Jason. This is our best CPU for gaming series in June 2024. What's the best gaming CPU right now? We're gonna go through all the pricing, and there have been some absolutely massive price cuts across the board as both AMD and Intel clear the decks for Ryzen 9000 and future CPUs. We'll also punch through where do we expect the 9600X and 9700X pricing to come in and the performance to come in versus the 7800X 3D and the existing Ryzen 7000 series lineup. Also talk about when we can expect the 9800X 3D. Is it coming sooner than expected? Remember, if you get value out of this video, give it a like as it makes a huge difference to the channel, especially this guy right here. And of course, subscribe for more cool PC content. With that, let's jump into it. This video is sponsored by Best Buy and the new Samsung Galaxy Book4 Edge Copilot Plus PC Laptop. The Snapdragon X Elite processor powering Copilot Plus PCs ushers in a new era of performance, intelligence, and power efficiency. This 16-inch dynamic AMOLED 120Hz screen provides amazing visuals. Press the Copilot AI button and unleash your creativity and productivity. And connect to your Samsung Android phone to seamlessly call family, text your friends, set reminders, and more. Check out the Samsung Galaxy Book4 Edge laptop at Best Buy using the link in the video description. Let's jump into CPU prices in June 2024, and look at that. We're gonna start off on the Ryzen side, but your eyes do not deceive you. Look at those massive price cuts up to 33%. 33%. What's going on here? Ryzen 9000 is coming. They're trying to clear the decks for this in a way that they have not done in previous generations. Typically, when a new generation comes, the pricing stagnates for a while, but they are doing something that seems to be different right now, which is massive discounts. Let's jump in. Ryzen 5, 5500. Let's start on the more budget CPUs where we've seen some interesting price cuts here. The Ryzen 5500 down to $83. $83 for this CPU. We haven't seen a CPU with this good value since the Ryzen 1600 AF, like 4 years ago. So this is amazing right now. Of course, if you want to come up in CPU power, the Ryzen 5600, not that far behind. It was $144 2 months ago. It's down to $116 now in June. And it's largely because they're trying to compete with Intel that's massively cut CPU prices. We'll go through those in just a moment. But right now, Ryzen 5600, $116 over at Newegg, Amazon, pretty much anywhere you want to buy it. The Ryzen 5700X, 5800X, not really interesting, down to $162. But the most interesting Ryzen 5000 CPU out there, the Ryzen 5700X 3D. The X3D 5700, $199 right now. Remember, it was just a couple months ago that CPU came out at $250. We're already seeing it drop down to $199, which is good because the 5800X 3D for some reason seems to be going the other direction. I think maybe we're running out of stock of that one. 5700X 3D, in fact, I had to switch out the retailer here just a second ago because it's sold out there. Here it is, $199. So if you're somebody who's been sitting on AM4, like an older Ryzen CPU, and you're like, oh, I'll just wait till the CPU gets it. Maybe it's here. Maybe the CPU has arrived, and you might want to get one now. Again, with a 5800X 3D, for some reason, the price is going up to $327. It's possible. It seems like they're low stock pretty much everywhere I look. Could just be that that's the end of the 5800X 3D, and the remaining CPUs that they have are hitting the lower thresholds, and they're bidding them as 5700X 3Ds instead. All right, switching quickly to Ryzen 7000 series CPUs, more massive price cuts, especially at the high core count end. But let's start off with the Ryzen 7600, $188 right now. My goodness, how far this has fallen. Remember, this CPU launched at $299. $188, great price for the CPU, especially given the level of performance that you're getting. You can also pick up the 7600X for $199, but between the two, honestly, you could either save the $10 or you could go this route instead. Now, I will say we are going to compare this to where we think the Ryzen 9600X is going to come in terms of price and performance a little bit later in the video and see if it's going to keep that value proposition. Ryzen 7700 and 7700X down to $246. That is absolutely an insane price. Insane price. That's less than the Ryzen 7600X came on the market for. $246 right now. And remember, you get included the Wraith Prism cooler to it. It's perfectly adequate cooler for this CPU if you want to get started with something, but remember, we expect the 9600X probably to have same multi-threaded and better gaming performance. So I feel like AMD is like, well, we better get rid of these things because it's going to kind of really clog up our pricing out there. And we will compare the 9700X both to this as well as the 7800X 3D. Speaking of the 7800X 3D, down to $339, down about $50 on the pricing. Wow, 50 bucks on pricing. Again, in the past, we haven't seen AMD cut prices like this on last generation stuff just before the new generation launch. They've typically held pricing kind of high. They've really gotten rid of all their promos and discounts and stuff like that, kind of forcing you to buy next generation. I'm not really sure what's going on here, other than maybe they think that they literally aren't going to be able to move this stuff, or maybe they'll give you some now and hopefully they won't have to give you massive discounts in the future to get rid of this stuff. But $339, especially given where we think the performance of this is going to be vis-a-vis the 9000 series CPUs. AMD spilled the beans that this is probably going to still be the best gaming CPU. We'll talk a little bit more about that in the news section and what to expect on the 9800X 3D. And then the huge anomaly out there is the Ryzen 7900X 3D, $314 until just like moments ago. Moments ago, I hit refresh and it went to back order here on Newegg's page. And this is what Amazon often does. As soon as it went to back order on Newegg's page, their price went back way up on it. And of course, you can't get it for the $315. You can still pick it up for $329 on back order right now. They got rid of the promo code, obviously, as soon as it goes to back order on it. But it was insane. This CPU, right now, you can get this cheaper than the 7800X 3D. That just shows you that a lot of people aren't excited about the whole 2 CCD things and only one of them having Vcache. Possibly in the next generation, we've heard maybe both of them are going to have Vcache. All right, let's jump over to Intel CPU pricing June 2024, and there have been some massive price cuts on the Intel side. In fact, it's probably one of the reasons that we've seen such huge Ryzen CPU price cuts. Let's go through. Let's start with the budget end, because I think this is where these Intel CPUs are the most interesting. The i3 12100, $84 now, down 11%, down from $94 last month. Great pickup right now at $85, especially if you want something with PCI Gen 4 and you want a super cheap system. You don't want to go with a Ryzen 5500. This is a great CPU to pick up. Of course, what really is putting pressure on the Ryzen 5600 out there is the i5 12400F, down to $109. Right now, $109 in June. In fact, $109.94 over at Newegg. Absolutely amazing. And the one thing I will say about these CPUs, the one kind of challenge for them is the B660 motherboards that are DDR4 motherboards. They seem to be drying up. There's still a handful out there, including the ASRock B660M Pro RS, the one that we continue to recommend out there, but it is getting a little thinner. Of course, we've got the i5 12600K down another $5. That CPU continues to be absolutely amazing for those of you who want to do a budget production system out there. But honestly, the 12700K, what is going on at $185 right now? That's if you take that and apply the $20 coupon on it, and obviously Newegg's got the $20 promo code on. The 12700KF down to $185. Totally insane. Remember, you don't need a Z series motherboard for these CPUs. You can run them at stock settings unlike a B series motherboard, as long as you get one with good enough VRMs. And there's several out there, like for instance, the ASRock B660M Pro RS, which you can get for $95. The rest of the pricing, I'm going to be honest with you, not that exciting. The 13400 down to $171 is nice, except it's slower than the 12600K. In fact, it is a 12600K that's been downbin, so I don't understand why that CPU continues to be more than the 12600K, other than, I guess, 13 is bigger than 12, therefore it needs to be more expensive. The 13700K, if you're just looking for gaming and you don't want to go Ryzen for some crazy reason, yeah, $291, it's a huge price cut. You can actually get it cheaper than the 14600K. Doesn't make any sense to me because the 14600K is a 13600K. A lot of other things that Intel needs to get right, and they're just not doing it right now. Let's jump into the CPU news, which is all about Ryzen 9000. Where is it going to come in versus Ryzen 7000 in terms of price and performance? And more importantly, price to performance. Should you be waiting for this thing? After all, that's what we really want to get to here. We're going to compare the 7600 versus the 9600X in terms of price and performance, where we think that's going to come in, as well as the 9700X versus 7800X 3D and the current 7700X. We're going to throw in the 7900X 3D in there just because that thing is so crazy right now in terms of its pricing. Let's talk first about the availability. We're expecting these by the end of July. There was recently a WCCF Tech article that said, yeah, they're going to come out July 31st. So we have absolutely no idea, but that's a rumor out there right now. But let's talk more importantly about the performance. So Donnie Woligoski, who's the senior marketing technical executive for AMD, and we actually were able to sit down with him at CES in January. Great conversation. He's saying that the Ryzen 9000 CPUs won't beat the 7800X 3D. Did, however, say that they're going to come very close, but they're not going to beat it. Now, that is in some respects what we saw with Ryzen 7000, with the 7000 non-X3D CPUs. didn't quite beat the 5800X 3D. I know in some benchmarks they had the 7700X slightly ahead of the 5800X 3D. But basically, for all intents and purposes, the 5800X 3D tied the 7700X, and the 7600X came in just behind it. So if we take that level of performance and we kind of project it here based on what some of the pricing might be right now, we can see what the price of performance is. Let's start off with the Ryzen 7600X versus the 9600X. If the 9600X comes at the same price as the 7600X, which is $299, given street pricing right now and given where we think the performance will be, I think I've estimated here it's going to be about 5 or 6% behind the 7800X 3D, then it would not be great in terms of price to performance. Look at $3.38 versus $3.03. 7600 is just going to make way more sense. And honestly, if you want the extra oomph, I'm not quite sure why you wouldn't just go spend the extra $30 or $40, get the 7800X 3D, where RAM speed is not going to matter as much. And again, we're assuming you're going to be using the same RAM. If you need more expensive RAM, then that's going to inflate the cost of 9600X as well. So overall, I just, at that price, I wouldn't see much value of it, but let's put in where we think it might be. I think that AMD might do something more closer to $249, and other leakers out there have said that's probably the lower level of where they would look at for the pricing. At that price, it's roughly on par in terms of value with the 7600X. $3.03 for the 7600 versus the $3.07 price of performance for 9600X. It would also give folks kind of a stop right there before the 7800X 3D. I think make a lot more sense. It would also give AMD some room to kind of cut that thing down towards $200. I think they're eventually going to need to do that. Of course, the big problem with DDR4 budget systems right now is they're so cheap compared to the DDR5 systems. So they are hitting some walls right now with more of the upper mid-range GPUs. So I would love to see that 7600 continue to fall in price. 9600X kind of take its place around $200. Then, of course, if we look at the 9700X, $329 is the lower bounds put out by some folks out there like Moore's Law is Dead. I'll leave a link to his video down in the video description. You can check that out. But let's say we did, and let's say we give it performance that's just behind the 7800X 3D. I think I assumed like basically 97% the same performance, so about 3% behind, let's say. $3.42 in terms of price performance. It's kind of right there if they priced it at $329. However, if they priced it at $399, which is where the 7700X came in, at retail, it completely blows up the value equation for the 9700X. Yes, it's obviously going to beat the 7800X 3D in multi-threaded performance. It just doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. So I think that 9700X really needs to come in cheaper. Even if they did something like $349, let's say, that puts it closer to the 7800X 3D, but I think folks are going to want to grab that 3D V-Cache. Those V-Cache parts seem to have held up better, possibly over time, maybe like the 5800X 3D, 5700X 3D, and I see people kind of maybe gravitating towards those instead of going with the non-X3D parts, which I'm not sure how they're going to hold up over time. It's really tough to say. Remember, gaming loves fast cache. It loves lots of fast cache out there. So that's something to think about. Of course, a lot of you are wondering, when's the 9800X 3D coming? That's the one that we're all waiting for out here. And I've told you in previous videos, yeah, it could be this year. It could be towards the end of this year, or it could even be in the first quarter of next year at CES in 2025. That's when I would normally expect it. However, I just continue to see rumors out there that they are now expecting it more in the fall, whether or not that's been moved up or not. It's hard to say. Club 386 came with an article a couple days ago basically saying they spoke to somebody at Computex, or claiming, I should say, that they spoke to somebody at Computex who's in the know, who said September is when we're going to get the 9800X 3D. Now, that would only be, since we expect these CPUs in July, whether it be July to August to September, less than 2 months. That's a little hard to believe that AMD would drop that kind of so quickly. Possibly, maybe they wanted to get the 9800X 3D out sooner, but they're just unable to for production reasons and other things like that. It's hard to say. Or maybe this is just complete bunk and you should disregard it and it will come in the first quarter. Again, this is always a hard thing when it comes to predicting this stuff based on leaked rumors, but I wanted to put this in front of you because I know it contradicts some of the other information I'd said earlier, and I am starting to lean now towards maybe it will come in the fall. Let's jump into the best CPU for gaming in June 2024. And if you're not familiar with how we do this, we take all the CPUs that we've been tracking, we take their performance for gaming and for multi-core, and then we basically put them together with RAM, a motherboard, a cooler, and we come up with either gaming cost and a production cost, and then a gaming price to performance and a production price to performance. Then we divide them out by budget, mid-range, high end. We'll go through this, of course. If you want to jump into the spreadsheet, put in pricing in your region, these are all US-based prices, or you want to change the configurations because you don't like my configurations, it's linked down in the video description. Feel free to jump in. There are instructions on the side here, how to make a duplicate copy of it, and I've also got a change log of all the things that I've been changing. Let's jump into the best budget gaming CPU 2024 in June, and this is where the total platform price is $450 or less. Look at that. The Ryzen 5500 just continues to dominate this category. And with those price cuts and with the falling price of B450 motherboards out there, continues to dominate. You can now put this together less than $197 for the entire platform out there because it comes with an included stock cooler. Now, if your GPU needs a PCIe Gen 4 system, obviously you're going to jump up to either the Ryzen 5600 or the i5-12400F. Basically the same price, around $250. Basically the same performance for either one of them. Both have really good options in terms of those more budget tier motherboards out there. This is using DDR4 and the included stock cooler. Some of the other CPUs just not keeping up as well, even though with some price cuts to 12100, not keeping up as well. 12600K is definitely more interesting, kind of on your way there to $313, a little bit more, get you a little bit more performance. But if you want to jump up to the next performance tier, you're really looking at like the 5700X3D or the Ryzen 7600, 7600X. Despite the 5700X3D being ahead in terms of price to performance, I would probably spend the extra, what is that, like $45 or $50 to get the Ryzen 7600. That way you're on AM5. In the future, you can drop a 9800 X3D or 11800 X3D or whatever the next Zen 6 X3D CPU is going to be after the 9800 X3D. It's just going to get you on that live platform. It makes a lot of sense to me. Jumping over to this mid-range production CPU in June 2024. So this is with a multi-core score is 170 or greater, and the price is less than $750 or $750 would also work. Look at Intel just continues to dominate. It's just due to the core heavy architecture and the fact that we use the multi-core score to kind of approximate this value. So right now with the huge price cuts on i7 12700K, either a DDR4 or a DDR5 system, although there's huge discount if you want to go DDR4 and you're just doing production, maybe you just price stability over everything. That was probably the way I would go. Remember, these are 32 gigabytes of system RAM too, not just 16 out there. It's really hard to beat. $381 and no slouch in gaming either if you want to do that. But if you're production first, it's pretty much all Intel. 12600K there, it's kind of hard to justify versus the 12700K being so close in terms of its price. And then all the rest of this stuff, unless you need super high levels of high-end performance, just not making a lot of sense. Jumping over the best mid-range gaming CPU 2024 in June. So this is where the gaming score is 130 or greater and the total price is $750 or less. So we're looking at that solid mid-range. If you got an RTX 4070, maybe a 7800 XT, 7900 GRE, those kind of GPUs, or even faster ones, to be quite honest. Even though the 5700 X3D is like kind of screaming there at the top of the chart right now, it's hard to kind of justify given it's not that much further ahead than the 7600. Yeah, 389 versus 443. Given that you're going to be on a live platform with the Ryzen 7600 and you're going to be able to drop in future upgrades on that AM5 platform, kind of really hard to ignore. 13600K, yeah, thanks for coming, but he's just not doing it. I mean, look at the 14600K. It's just total garbage right now. Intel, what are you doing out there? Try and be competitive. It's possible that they're just going to let these things rot on the shelf until we get Alder Lake. I don't know what they're doing out there. Help me out. Right now, a lot of these other CPUs just really hard to justify unless you're looking for higher performance. All right, jumping over to high performance production where the multi-core score is 315 or greater. Yes, it's normally 330, but I realize it's only filtering one CPU out, which is a 7900 X3D. And with this huge price cut on that CPU, I guess it was kind of who cares before, I figured people would want to see where it placed on the chart. So I reduced it a little bit. This still is all Intel 14700K. Good news is it looks like maybe the bug with the Intel CPUs burning out is mostly the i9 CPUs based on some leak stuff from Igor's lab out there. Who really knows? I could understand if people want to stay away from Intel. just on the unlocked CPUs, just based on that. 375 right now in terms of 14700K. Really good. Remember, it's got those 4 extra E-cores over the 13700K. And then, yeah, the Ryzen 7900X3D doing pretty well. But honestly, we all know this is about to massively change in a month when we get the 9950X and the 9900X. So it's kind of hard to justify probably any of these CPUs for just a high performance production system. Jumping over to this high performance gaming CPU 2024 in June. Look at that. This is where the gaming score is 160 or greater. Oh my gosh, the 7800X3D is finally unseated by the 7900X3D, and that's only because of the weird pricing going on right now. And despite the fact the 7900X3D has slightly less gaming performance, it's not less enough in order to offset the pricing. So you basically get the 7800X3D dethroned by another AMD X3D CPU. That being said, I wouldn't buy the X3D, the 7900X3D. Remember, it has 2 CCDs, only one of them has Vcache on it, and you have to use like the Xbox Game Bar, and it's supposed to turn off the right CCD for gaming. Doesn't always get it right. It's a little too finicky for me. I'd stick with the 7800X3D. Still plenty of multi-threaded power out there. Now, it will be interesting to see next month, where does the 9700X kind of dump into this chart here? Does it unseat the 7800X3D in terms of price to performance? Or is the 7800X3D just going to continue to be far and away the best CPU for high performance gaming? It's going to be interesting. All right, let's play everyone's favorite game. Should you buy now or should you wait? Well, oh my goodness, we are got to be getting close at this point. I'm filming this towards the end or kind of middle of June right now. There's probably only about another month and a half left to go, let's be honest, until we get to Ryzen 9000 series CPUs, regardless of all these guesses on the release date. We do expect AMD will actually make an announcement at some point where they will actually tell us what the pricing is and will actually tell us what the release date is. Those will be great pieces of information. Where would you be right now? Let's go budget by budget. At the budget level, honestly, no reason to wait. In fact, I'm a little worried that some of these really good pricing out here in terms of like the i5-12400F and the Ryzen 5600 might dry up. So if you're somebody and you're looking to spend, let's say like $700 or $800 and you want to build a gaming, check out our best budget gaming builds right now. We primarily use those CPUs in some great builds starting around $500. You can get gaming right now, and GPU prices are also very cheap right now. So check those out. But then when we get to the mid-range, listen, if you're just trying to eke into like a Ryzen 7600 system, you're spending right around $900-ish. Maybe there's no reason to wait because again, we may see that price discounts on the 7000 series go away as they want to force you to buy the 9000. We've seen that in the past. So if you're on that dividing line, I might just pick up a Ryzen 7600. Remember, even if you make a mistake and get the 7600 right now, a couple years later, you're just going to drop in an X3D CPU and you're going to keep going. So I wouldn't really worry about that. But for those of you kind of more in the upper mid-range, yeah, I'd probably push the big pause button right now. I think we want to see 7800X3D versus the 9600 versus the 9700. Although, AMD could pull the discounts on the 7800X3D also and push that CPU price back up to $400, and then all of a sudden it's not there anymore. So we are going to take a little bit of a gamble. If you want to wait, and you want to wait in both the mid-range and the high end right now, you're basically throwing the dice to see, are these new CPUs going to be any better versus can I just pick up a 7800X3D right now? I'd probably lean towards just picking up the 7800X3D right now, unless you're somebody at the ultra high end and you're waiting for the 9800X3D. Also, I know Intel has Alder Lake coming out there. Given what we've seen out of them from 14th gen, I'm going to use huge air quotes because we all know it wasn't a generation. They just used another box for it and they slightly binned up 13th gen. I'm not going to give Intel the benefit of the doubt this time. If you feel like giving Intel the benefit of the doubt, then maybe consider waiting. I feel like that they've lost their benefit of the doubt right now, and it's kind of the show me time, right? You got to bring something to the table and show me that you're back in the game before I'm ready to like stop everything I'm doing. Remember, if you got value out of this video, give it a like. It makes a huge difference to the channel, especially this guy right here, and of course subscribe. Click that bell icon. That way you get notified when we release cool content. Hey, speaking of cool content, did you check out our best 1440p gaming monitor 2024 video? Right here. It's a great time to buy a 1440p gaming monitor. Prices are insanely cheap. Check it out, and we'll catch you on the next one.